Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I've got a story here that will divide the nation. And it actually happened a couple weeks ago, and somehow it stayed off my radar. But Paul sent me notes and said, Steve, this story, are you going to talk about it? And of course I am. Police bust into Arkansas family's home and arrest dad for piercing son's ear. So, pertinent facts. A high school-aged boy had his ear pierced by his father. Therefore, the police came and busted into the house and arrested the father. And the question then becomes, had the father done anything wrong? But you can also see how this story escalated the way it did based on things that were said by various people in it. Richard Polina wrote this version for the New York Post, but the story's all over the place. And despite the fact the story's all over the place, I could not find out what the age of the child is. Now, we do know he's under 16 because of the way the law is written, and he is in high school. So that's a pretty narrow band of ages that he could be. But I was looking for a specific age and didn't find one. But the chaos began when the police department in a small town down there did a welfare check after a high school resource officer reported a student telling a classmate that his drunk father put him in a chokehold and shoved a piercing in his ear. That's the statement that the police got. But you'll already notice that it is a resource officer saying he was told by somebody else who was told, and as you might know, that's hearsay. That's hearsay when people start telling what other people told them, and then it goes down the line, and pretty soon it's like, I'm not quite sure who started this. But the father is 45 years old. He admitted that he pierced his son's ear, but he refused to let the officers speak to the boy and would not answer any further questions. So they went to his house, knocked on the door. That's how this whole thing started. Police later returned in numbers with an arrest warrant issued by the prosecutor's office, which sparked the mayhem captured on video. In a TikTok posted by The Sun, 4 police officers were seen inside their home, pinning the father against the wall and handcuffing him. And the son can be heard saying on camera, "I wanted my ears pierced." As confusion set in, the wife got involved and asked why they were in the house, and referring to the police officers, and demanded to know what caused they had to arrest her husband. Well, at this point, they've got a warrant, apparently. So, why are you doing this? The son asked the officers as they were handcuffing his father. During the chaos, an officer explains to the woman that the father is being arrested for performing body art without a license, to which the father laughs and sarcastically echoes the officer, apparently baffled by the charges. Officers then attempted to escort the father out of the house, but there was a struggle which forced the police to shove him out the front door. As officers marched the father down the street, his wife and son followed, both in disbelief at the situation. So it takes 4 cops coming into my house with no permission, and busted in my front door, his wife says, as they move toward their vehicles with her husband in the cuffs. Meanwhile, the son reiterates, "I wanted my ears pierced." So here's what you got to know. In Arkansas, it is illegal for artists to perform body art on a person under 16 years of age, regardless of parental consent. However, some news sources point out that there is also an exception that says, except when piercing the earlobe. So they're recognizing that the earlobe piercing is not as, fraught with peril as like piercing your tongue or something. So it is illegal to perform body art on a person under 16 years of age, regardless of parental consent, except when piercing the earlobe. So violation of that law is a felony. It's a Class D felony. Since the father was not a licensed artist, it was also illegal for him to perform body art in any unlicensed facility. Dad was also charged with endangering the welfare of a minor, refusing to submit to arrest, and obstructing government operations. Was released on a $1,500 bond Saturday after spending 2 nights in the Washington County Jail, according to online records. And there was a statement issued that simply said, officers told Jeremy he was under arrest and explained the probable cause for the arrest, and he refused to comply. Officers then took him into custody. And so the big question here is, this whole story appears to have been triggered by a student saying, I heard him say his drunken father pinned him down and pierced his ear. First question anybody should ask here is, did this kid actually say that? The subject of the story, did he ever actually say, my drunken father pinned me down and pierced my ear? Did he ever actually say that? If he didn't say that, you got to ask yourself who started this and why. If he did say it, then the question is, was he serious or was he joking? Now, of course, if he's joking and he says that somebody doesn't understand humor, you can kind of understand why somebody might go, gee, that's weird. Your dad gets drunk and he pins you down and pierces your ear against your will. And I can see why somebody would want to look into that. Why they'd want to look into that. Bigger question is, why didn't the school resources officer, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is shorthand for a police officer, quite often a police officer, who is assigned to a school in case there's issues. And so you've got a police officer on the grounds, but we call him a resource officer so as not to scare anybody. It could be a her, by the way, also. So school resource officer hears this story, and admittedly, it is not coming from the source. It's coming from somebody who said they got it from the source. So a school resource officer could have gone and found the kid and said, I got a question for you. When did you get your ear pierced? What's the deal with that? And now, I know some people, believe it or not, are going to say, Steve, even that's too much. The resource officer shouldn't be interrogating the kid on school grounds without the parents present. Well, you can understand that there have to be situations out there, I'm sure there are, where there are children who are being abused at home, and I'm not talking about this case, I'm talking in general, who are being abused at home, and if you bring the parents in and say, okay, we're going to talk to your kid now about the possibility that you might be abusing them, okay, cool, okay, let's start talking now. So I can understand a resource officer going up to the kid and just saying, hey, I'm just curious. It doesn't have to be with a bright light in his face and, hooked up to a machine and told it's a lie detector. I'm just saying, just a curious question. I see you got your ear pierced. When did that happen? What's the story there? Who did that? And find out, But if the kid goes, oh, something, I asked my dad to pierce my ear. I wanted a pierced ear. Okay. I mean, and that would be the end of it. And if the kid actually breaks down crying and goes, my dad gets drunk and he starts poking me with an ice pick, and this time it went through my ear, you can see why that would be a concern to other people, right? But I'll also tell you that I've seen quite a few people beneath the age of 16 in my life with pierced ears. And I'm not sure that all of them are being done in licensed studios. Now, again, this is going to vary from state to state, but they're actually saying that in Arkansas, a person who's 15 years old cannot get any body piercings except for piercing the earlobe with or without parental consent. Even if the parent says, I want my daughter to have pierced ears, she's 15, you gotta wait. So apparently Arkansas is firmly in the grips of the clip-on earring industry. Their lobby is powerful. I find this a little unusual. But of course, what you have here, and again, this could be, we don't know. It could be that the kid was telling the truth to his classmate in the study hall, and it was a cry for help. It could be. It could also be that the kid never said anything like that, and somebody else has made up that story. And now, it's been a little while, a couple years, since I was in high school. I'm surprised I remember any of it. No, I remember high school, and I remember junior high. And I remember, that's what we called middle school back then, kids. And I remember back then, when you'd hear stories. Hey, did you hear what so-and-so did over the weekend? Oh my God, did you hear what they did? Oh, did you hear? And you start hearing different versions of the same story. And then when you go talk to the person who's in the story, like, no, that's not what happened. It's not what happened. And they tell you what actually did happen. And you realize, oh, kids love to tell stories and they love to embellish them, especially if it gets them some attention. So you're sitting in a study hall and the monitor is not paying attention. There's like 6 kids around a desk and you're not going to believe what happened, man. That kid's dad got drunk and pinned him down and started poking at his ear with an ice pick. Oh yeah, he told me all about it, man. Told me all about it. He showed it to me. It's gross. And so could be just entirely made up. We don't know. So I don't blame someone for being concerned. But that's pretty much where it ends for me. Because when you literally have police officers go to the person's house, pounding on the door, saying, we demand to speak to somebody about that kid's pierced ear, it does sound like an awfully wasteful thing to be doing with the city resources. And it gets us back to that resource officer in the school. The resource officer in the school. What is their job? Well, they're there in case of emergencies, but how often do they have those? And so many resource officers do simply kind of wander around like they're on patrol, and they kind of go places where they think there could theoretically be issues if issues did arise. So if kids are like outside passing between buildings, for instance, a resource officer might go out there and kind of stand around, make sure everybody gets back and forth okay. If school's starting and people are being dropped off, the resource officer might go out and kind of stand out where the people are being dropped off. End of school, go out and watch kids get on the buses, But they're not actually doing a whole lot of work all the time. And so a resource officer theoretically could have gone and found the kid and just casually said, hey, I'm just curious. And that'd be the end of it, possibly. So it seems like this got a little bit out of control. We'll see what happens. Like I said, it happened a few weeks ago, but somehow I didn't see it. So Paul, thanks for sending it. But keep in mind that in Arkansas, below the age of 16, you cannot get body piercings by anybody in any situation legally, even with parental consent, except there is that exception for the earlobe. Now, in one of the articles I read, they said, so with that exception about the earlobe, it seems like this father should be in the clear. And a prosecutor apparently said, well, the law also says that any piercing being done legally must be done under certain conditions in a licensed facility of some sort. And we doubt that the father's living room or kitchen or wherever they were was a licensed facility. But I think that a lot of people are going to look at this and go, wait a second, you're telling me that anybody who's ever had an ear pierced in Arkansas that wasn't done at a body art studio is breaking the law and it's a felony somehow? So it does seem a bit much. But there you go, from the New York Post, Richard Polina wrote that. Police bust into Arkansas family's home and arrest dad for piercing his son's ear. And there was a video shot of the arrest that's gone viral, TikTok and elsewhere. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. No matter how short or long your journey to your accomplishment is, if you don't begin, you don't get there. Beginning is difficult, but unavoidable.